The sun was setting over New Eden, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The colony, nestled on a distant planet at the edge of explored space, was peaceful. Its people had worked hard to build a life here, far from Earth's crowded cities and endless wars. Farms stretched as far as the eye could see, their crops thriving under artificial domes that protected them from the harsh winds outside. Children played in the streets, and families gathered for dinner in cozy homes. It was a place where hope lived, a fresh start for humanity among the stars. But peace has a way of lulling people into complacency. No one saw it coming, not until it was too late. It started with a flicker in the sky. A faint shimmer, like heat waves rising from the ground, caught the attention of Dr. Elena Voss. She was standing on the observation deck of the colony's main research facility, staring out at the horizon. At first, she thought it might be some kind of atmospheric anomaly, something caused by the planet's magnetic field. But then the shimmer grew brighter, more defined, until it wasn't just light. It was ships. Hundreds of them. They descended silently, their sleek metallic forms glinting in the fading sunlight. They moved with precision, forming a perfect circle around New Eden. Panic spread quickly through the colony as alarms began to blare. People ran to their homes, locking doors and shutting windows. Others rushed to evacuation points, only to find them already overcrowded. The colony's leaders scrambled to make sense of what was happening, but there was no time. Within minutes, the invaders opened fire. The first blast struck the communications tower, severing the colony's ability to call for help. Another hit the power grid, plunging half the settlement into darkness. Explosions erupted across the landscape, turning fields of wheat into ash and reducing buildings to rubble. The air filled with smoke and screams. Everyone knew this wasn't random destruction. It was calculated, methodical. Whoever these beings were, they wanted control. Elena crouched behind a console in the now darkened control room, her heart pounding. Around her, colleagues shouted orders, trying desperately to organize a defense. But how could they fight back? New Eden wasn't built for war. Its defenses were outdated, designed to deter pirates or small-scale raids, not an invasion of this magnitude. Even the colony's militia, armed with rifles and basic training, stood little chance against the advanced technology of the attackers. Through the chaos, Elena managed to access a terminal. Her hands trembled as she typed commands, rerouting emergency power to the system's backup transmitter. If she could send out a distress signal, if she could warn someone, anyone, there might still be hope. She didn't know who would answer, or even if the message would reach its destination, but she had to try. As she worked, the sound of gunfire echoed closer. The invaders had breached the perimeter. Through the shattered windows of the facility, Elena caught glimpses of them. Tall, insect-like creatures with exoskeletons that gleamed like polished steel. Their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, scanning everything they passed. Behind them came smaller humanoid figures, dragging terrified colonists away. The invaders spoke in guttural tones, their language incomprehensible but laced with authority. There was no doubt they were in charge. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. She encoded her message carefully, embedding it with coordinates and details about the attack. "This is Dr. Elena Voss of New Eden Colony," she dictated into the microphone. "We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Request immediate assistance. Coordinates attached." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "Please hurry." The transmission went out just as the door to the control room burst open. One of the insect-like creatures stepped inside, its mandibles clicking ominously. Elena froze, her breath catching in her throat. For a split second, she considered fighting back, grabbing a nearby wrench and swinging it at the creature's head. But before she could act, another figure appeared, a human, wearing tattered clothes and the look of defeat. "Don't resist," the man whispered urgently. "They'll kill you if you do." Elena lowered the wrench, her body shaking with fear and frustration. As the invaders surrounded her, binding her wrists with strange, glowing restraints, she couldn't help but think of all the work she'd done on this planet, all the lives she'd touched. And now it was gone, all of it, destroyed in a matter of hours. Outside, the battle raged on. The colony's defenders fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Every shot fired seemed to draw two more from the enemy. Bodies littered the streets, both human and alien. Fires burned unchecked, consuming everything in their path. By nightfall, the once thriving settlement lay in ruins. High above the carnage, aboard a massive flagship, Warlord Calver watched the devastation unfold with satisfaction. To him, this was not just a conquest, it was a statement. The Vorthic hegemony had spent centuries expanding its empire, subjugating weaker species and claiming their resources. Humanity, with its scattered colonies and lack of unity, posed no real threat. Or so he believed. Calver turned to his advisors, who hovered nervously nearby. "The humans will learn," he said, his voice cold and commanding. "They will see that resistance is futile. Once we break their spirit, they will serve us willingly." But deep down, a tiny seed of doubt lingered. Something about the way the humans had fought, not just today, but throughout history, gave him pause. They were fragile, yes, but also tenacious, resourceful, dangerous, even when cornered. Still, he dismissed the thought. What mattered now was victory. And victory, he assured himself, was assured. Little did he know, Elena's message had traveled farther than he or anyone else could have imagined. Past the jamming signals of the Vorthic fleet, past the borders of known space, it reached a planet unlike any other. A planet called Earth. And Earth was listening. The signal traveled through the vast emptiness of space, a faint whisper of desperation carried by electromagnetic waves. It crossed stars and galaxies, slipping past cosmic storms and asteroid fields until it reached its destination, Earth. But this was not the Earth humanity had left behind. Centuries ago, a blue-green jewel teeming with life and promise. This was a planet that had been forged in fire, shaped by hardship, and hardened into something almost unrecognizable. Earth was no longer just a home. It was a death world. Its surface was scarred by endless natural disasters, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, earthquakes, and floods that could wipe out entire cities in moments. Predators roamed freely, creatures so deadly they made the fiercest animals of old seem tame by comparison. The air itself was toxic in some regions, forcing humans to adapt or perish. And yet, against all odds, humanity had survived. Not only survived, but thrived. The people of Earth were different now. They were leaner, stronger, faster. Their bodies had evolved to withstand extreme conditions, their minds sharpened by constant danger. Every man, woman, and child knew how to fight, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Survival was not a luxury here. It was a necessity. Over time, humanity's focus shifted from exploration and discovery to resilience and dominance. Earth became less of a cradle for civilization and more of a fortress, a place where strength was valued above all else. When Elena's SOS reached Earth, it did not go unnoticed. In a high-tech command center buried deep beneath the planet's surface, alarms began to blare. Analysts scrambled to decode the message, their faces pale as they pieced together the details. A colony under attack. An unknown enemy. Coordinates leading to a distant star system. The implications were clear. Humanity was at risk. News of the distress call spread quickly, reaching the ears of leaders across the globe. On Earth, there were no nations anymore, only factions, each governing its own territory with ruthless efficiency. These factions rarely agreed on anything, but one thing united them: the survival of the species. When faced with an external threat, old rivalries faded away. replaced by a single-minded determination to protect what was theirs. A council convened in the heart of the command center, a massive chamber illuminated by holographic displays showing maps of the galaxy. Around the table sat representatives from every major faction, generals clad in battle-worn armor, scientists whose eyes gleamed with intelligence, corporate magnates whose wealth rivaled kingdoms. At the head of the table stood Commander Marcus Kane, a towering figure whose reputation preceded him. He was a veteran of countless battles, his body marked by scars earned in combat against Earth's deadliest predators. His voice carried authority, and when he spoke, people listened. "This isn't just about New Eden," Kane said, his tone firm but measured. "If we let this stand, if we allow these invaders to take one of our colonies without consequence, they'll see us as weak. They'll come for Earth next." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some nodded in agreement, while others hesitated. Sending forces to such a distant location would require resources they couldn't afford to lose. What if the colony was already beyond saving? What if this was a trap? Elena's message played again over the speakers, her voice trembling but resolute. "Please hurry." The words hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the lives hanging in the balance. Kane slammed his fist on the table, silencing the dissent. "We don't abandon our own," he growled. "Not ever. If we do, we're no better than the monsters who attacked them." His words struck a nerve. Slowly, reluctantly, the council members began to nod. Earth would respond not with diplomacy or negotiation, but with force. This was not a plea for help. It was a declaration of war. Preparations began immediately. Ships were readied, their hulls reinforced with materials mined from Earth's most treacherous regions. Weapon systems were calibrated, drawing power from fusion reactors capable of sustaining entire cities. Soldiers were called to duty, their ranks filled with men and women who had grown up fighting for survival. Each volunteer underwent rigorous testing to ensure they were ready for whatever awaited them. There was no room for weakness on this mission. Among the chosen was Lieutenant Sarah Quinn, a young officer known for her quick thinking and unwavering courage. She had spent years patrolling Earth's most dangerous zones, fending off predators and rescuing survivors from collapsed shelters. Now, she found herself standing aboard one of the fleet's flagship vessels, staring out at the rows of soldiers preparing for departure. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread. This wasn't like any mission she'd faced before. Out there, beyond the safety of Earth's atmosphere, lay the unknown dot. As the fleet launched into space, Earth disappeared behind them, shrinking to a tiny dot before vanishing altogether. The journey to New Eden would take weeks, even with the fastest engines available. During that time, the crew trained tirelessly, honing their skills and studying every scrap of information they had about the invaders. They knew little only that the enemy was organized, technologically advanced, and ruthless. But ignorance didn't breed fear among these warriors. It bred determination. Commander Kane addressed the fleet via hologram, his image projected onto screens throughout the ships. "This is not just another battle," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "This is a test of who we are and what we stand for. We go to New Eden not as conquerors, but as protectors. We will show the galaxy that humanity does not bow. We do not break. We fight." His words resonated with everyone aboard the ships. For many, this was more than a mission. It was a chance to prove themselves, to remind the universe why Earth was feared. Stories of the Deathworlders had spread far and wide, tales of a species that thrived where others perished. To outsiders, Earth was a mystery, a place shrouded in legend. Some believed it was cursed, others thought it was abandoned. Few dared approach it, and fewer still returned to tell the tale. Those who did spoke of humans, unlike any others, fierce, Relentless, unstoppable. Weeks passed, and the fleet drew closer to New Eden. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The colony was in ruins, its population decimated. Survivors huddled in underground bunkers, clinging to life as the invaders tightened their grip. The Vorthic hegemony, as the attackers called themselves, showed no mercy. They viewed humanity as inferior, weak, unworthy of existence. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth. They had awoken something far more dangerous than they could imagine. Finally, the fleet arrived. Through the windows of the lead ship, the crew saw the devastation for the first time. Smoke choked the skies, and flames licked at the horizon. Buildings lay in rubble, their skeletal remains jutting out like broken bones. The once vibrant colony was a graveyard, a testament to the cost of complacency. But amidst the destruction, there was hope. Hope carried by the warriors of Earth, the Deathworlders, who had come to reclaim what was theirs. As the ships descended toward the surface, engines roaring, the invaders looked up, and for the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. They had thought victory was assured. They were wrong. The arrival of Earth's fleet was like a storm breaking over New Eden. The ships descended from the sky, their engines roaring with a sound that shook the ground beneath them. To the survivors hiding in bunkers and ruins below, it felt like both salvation and chaos all at once. For the invaders, the Vorthic hegemony, it was something else entirely. Confusion, fear, and disbelief. The Vorthics had never seen anything like these ships. Sleek yet rugged, they were built not for elegance, but for survival. Their hulls bore scars from battles fought in Earth's harshest environments, patched together with materials scavenged from the planet's most dangerous regions. These were not the polished vessels of an empire. They were tools of war, crafted by people who understood struggle better than anyone. And when the first wave of drones launched from the ships, the Vorthics realized they were dealing with an enemy unlike any other. Commander Marcus Kane led the assault from the bridge of his flagship, his sharp eyes scanning holographic displays as reports poured in. His strategy was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and leave no room for escape. Stealth drones swarmed across the battlefield, targeting key installations, communication arrays, power generators, and supply depots. Within minutes, the Vorthic's carefully coordinated operation began to unravel. Orders went unanswered, weapon systems failed, and panic spread among their ranks. On the ground, Lieutenant Sarah Quinn commanded one of the first teams to land. Her squad moved with precision, each member trained to adapt instantly to changing conditions. They wore suits designed for Earth's deadliest environments, lightweight yet durable enough to withstand extreme temperatures and radiation. Their weapons were equally advanced, capable of piercing armor or cutting through flesh with equal ease. Every soldier carried knives forged from Earth's hardest metals, relics of a time when humanity relied on close quarters combat to survive. Quinn's team had one objective: rescue survivors and gather intelligence. As they advanced into the ruins of New Eden, they encountered pockets of resistance. Small groups of Vorthic soldiers tried to hold their ground, but they were unprepared for the ferocity of the humans. The Deathworlders didn't just fight, they adapted. When conventional tactics failed, they improvised. A fallen drone became a makeshift shield. A piece of debris turned into a weapon. Every movement was calculated. Every action driven by instinct, honed through years of surviving. Earth's challenges it wasn't long before Quinn's team discovered Elena Voss. She was being held in a makeshift prison camp. Her body battered, but her spirit unbroken. When Quinn found her, Elena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, clutching a shard of metal she intended to use as a weapon if necessary. Her eyes widened as the human soldiers burst into the room, their faces obscured by helmets. "Don't shoot!" Quinn shouted, raising her hand slightly to show she meant no harm. "We're here to help." Elena blinked, disbelieving. You're "You're from Earth?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," Quinn replied, kneeling beside her. "We came as soon as we got your message." For a moment, Elena simply stared, tears welling up in her eyes. Then she nodded, gripping Quinn's arm tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." With Elena freed, the team pressed onward, gathering more survivors along the way. Each person they rescued added another layer to their understanding of the situation. The Vorthics weren't just conquerors, they were enslavers. Those they didn't kill outright were forced into labor, building fortifications or mining resources under brutal conditions. The few who resisted were executed publicly, their bodies left as warnings to others. Back aboard the flagship, Commander Kane reviewed the intel gathered by Quinn's team. He studied maps of the colony, identifying choke points and weak spots in the Vorthic defenses. What he saw filled him with grim satisfaction. The invaders had grown complacent, assuming their superior numbers and technology would guarantee victory. They hadn't anticipated humanity's resilience or its ingenuity. Kane called a meeting with his top officers. Around the table sat men and women whose faces were etched with determination. There was no hesitation in their expressions, only focus. This was what they had trained for, what they had lived for. Earth had sent its best, and they would not fail. "We've weakened them," Kane said, pointing to the holographic display. "But they still outnumber us. If we want to win this, we need to strike where it hurts most their leadership." His plan was bold, almost reckless. He proposed sending a small strike force deep behind enemy lines to capture Warlord Calver, the leader of the Vorthic invasion. Without him, the invaders would be thrown into disarray. It was a risky move, but Kane believed it was their best chance. "I'll lead the mission myself," he declared. Some of the officers protested, arguing that Kane was too valuable to risk on such a dangerous task. But he silenced them with a glare. "If I don't go, who will? Someone needs to remind these bastards why they should never mess with us." The strike team assembled quickly, consisting of Kane, Quinn, and a handful of elite soldiers. They loaded their gear onto a stealth shuttle and launched toward the orbital platform where Calver was stationed. The journey was tense, every second stretching longer than the last. As they approached the platform, alarms began to blare, alerting the Vorthics to their presence. "They know we're coming," Quinn muttered, checking her weapon one last time. "Good," Kane replied, his voice cold. "Let them." The shuttle docked with a loud clang, and the team disembarked, moving swiftly through the labyrinthine corridors of the station. Resistance was fierce, but the humans fought with a ferocity that shocked even themselves. Each step forward was earned through blood and determination. Bodies littered the halls, both Vorthic and human, but the Deathworlders refused to falter. Finally, they reached the command center. Inside, Warlord Calver stood surrounded by guards, his towering form radiating authority. His glowing blue eyes narrowed as he saw the intruders, his mandibles clicking angrily. "You dare challenge me?" he snarled, drawing a blade from his side. "I am Calver, master of the Vorthic hegemony." Kane stepped forward, his own blade gleaming in the dim light. "And I am Marcus Kane, protector of humanity. Your reign ends here." The two clashed in a brutal duel, their movements a blur of steel and fury. Calver was strong, his exoskeleton nearly impenetrable, but Kane was faster. Years of hunting Earth's apex predators had taught him how to exploit weaknesses, how to turn an opponent's strength against them. With a final, devastating strike, he plunged his blade into Calver's chest, silencing the warlord forever. As Calver fell, the station erupted into chaos. The remaining Vorthics scrambled to regroup, but without their leader, their discipline crumbled. The humans seized the opportunity, broadcasting Calver's death across the battlefield. The effect was immediate. Morale among the invaders plummeted, and many surrendered on the spot. By the time the dust settled, the Vorthak forces were in full retreat. Their ships fled the system, pursued by Earth's fleet until they disappeared into the void. New Eden was saved, but at a cost. The colony lay in ruins, its people scarred but alive. And though the battle was won, the war was far from over. As Kane stood amidst the wreckage, watching the survivors emerge from hiding, he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy now knew the name of Earth, and it would remember. The Vorthiks were not used to losing. For centuries, they had swept through the galaxy like a storm, conquering weaker species and claiming their resources without mercy. They saw themselves as superior beings, destined to rule over those they deemed inferior. But now, for the first time in their history, they faced an enemy they could not understand, an enemy that refused to break. No matter how hard they tried, Warlord Kelver was dead. His body left behind on the orbital platform as Earth's fleet chased the remnants of the Vorthik armada into the void. Without their leader, the invaders were in disarray. Panic spread through their ranks, and their once disciplined soldiers began making mistakes. Some ships fled blindly, colliding with asteroids or drifting off course. Others turned on each other, blaming one another for the failure. The humans had broken them, not just physically, but mentally. But the Vorthiks were not ready to give up. Deep within their ranks, a new leader emerged, Sub-Commander Tazrik, a cunning tactician known for his ruthlessness. He gathered what remained of the fleet and devised a desperate plan. If brute force had failed, then perhaps subtlety would succeed. Instead of continuing the fight head-on, Tazrik ordered his forces to deploy experimental bioweapons viruses designed to devastate entire ecosystems. These weapons had been developed in secret, intended as a last resort. Now, Tazrik saw no choice but to use them. The bioweapons were unleashed on New Eden, spreading through the atmosphere like invisible plagues. Plants began to wilt and die. Animals collapsed where they stood. Even the air grew thick with toxins, making it harder to breathe. The survivors who had emerged from hiding were forced back underground, coughing and gasping for air. It seemed as though the Vorthiks had found a way to win after all. But humanity was not so easily defeated. Commander Marcus Kane watched the effects of the bioweapons unfold from the safety of his flagship. His jaw tightened as he studied the data streaming in from sensors scattered across the planet. The situation was dire, but Kane refused to let despair take hold. "We didn't come this far to lose now," he growled, turning to his crew. "Find me a solution?" The scientists aboard the fleet worked tirelessly, analyzing samples of the bioweapons and testing possible countermeasures. Back on Earth, humanity had faced countless threats from its environment viruses, radiation, toxic chemicals, and survived. The same resilience that allowed humans to endure their Deathworld home gave them an edge here. With Elena Voss's help, they identified weaknesses in the bioweapons design. The viruses were highly effective but unstable, prone to breaking down under certain conditions. Using scavenged materials and ingenuity born from necessity, the humans began retrofitting abandoned colonial machinery into improvised decontamination units. Giant fans powered by fusion reactors blasted neutralizing agents into the air, while mobile labs processed soil and water to remove toxins. Teams of engineers worked around the clock, their hands blistered and their faces streaked with grease, but none complained. This was survival, their specialty. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sarah Quinn led ground teams in securing key locations needed to stabilize the environment. Each mission was a race against time, as the bioweapons continued to spread unchecked. Quinn's team moved quickly, clearing areas of Vorthik resistance and setting up portable filtration systems. At one point, they stumbled upon a hidden cache of Vorthik supplies, including vials containing samples of the bioweapons. Quinn immediately radioed the discovery back to the fleet. knowing it could provide crucial insights into defeating the threat. Back aboard the flagship, Kane reviewed the latest intel. The bioweapons were slowing down, thanks to the humans' efforts, but they weren't gone yet. More importantly, Tazrik's forces were regrouping, preparing for a final assault. Kane knew they couldn't afford to keep playing defense. It was time to end this. He called together his top officers, laying out a bold plan. "We've weakened them," Kane said, pointing to a holographic map of the system. "Now we finish them. We'll hit their remaining ships hard, targeting their engines and life support systems. Once they're disabled, we board them and take control. No retreats. No surrenders." The officers nodded grimly, understanding the stakes. This would be the most dangerous part of the mission, requiring every ounce of skill and courage they possessed. But if they succeeded, the Vortex would never threaten humanity again. As the fleet prepared for the final push, Kane took a moment to reflect. He thought about Earth, about the struggles his people had endured to survive. They had faced predators, natural disasters, and countless other dangers, yet they had always found a way to persevere. That same spirit burned in every soldier aboard these ships. They were not just fighting for New Eden. They were fighting for their right to exist, to stand tall among the stars. The battle began at dawn. Earth ships launched a coordinated assault, swarming the Vorthik fleet like predators circling prey. Missiles streaked through space, striking vulnerable points on the enemy vessels. Explosions lit up the darkness, sending debris spiraling into the void. The Vorthiks fought back fiercely, but their morale was shattered. Without Calvert to lead them, they lacked direction. Their formations fell apart, leaving them exposed to the humans' relentless attacks. Kane personally led a boarding party onto one of the largest Vorthik ships, determined to capture Tazrik. The corridors inside were dark and narrow, filled with the acrid smell of burning metal. Resistance was heavy, but the humans pushed forward with unrelenting determination. Every step brought them closer to their goal. Finally, they reached the command center. Inside, Tazrik waited, surrounded by a small group of loyal guards. His eyes gleamed with hatred as he saw Kane enter, flanked by Quinn and her team. "You think you've won?" Tazrik spat, raising his weapon. "You're nothing but pests." "Vermin." Kane didn't respond. Instead, he charged forward, his movements swift and precise. The fight was brutal, both sides exchanging blows with deadly intent. Tazrik was strong, but Kane's experience fighting Earth's apex predators gave him the upper hand. With a final crushing strike, Kane disarmed Tazrik and pinned him to the ground. "It's over," Kane said, his voice cold. "Your kind will never harm us again." Tazrik snarled, struggling against Kane's grip. But there was no escape. The humans had claimed victory. By the time the battle ended, the Vorthik fleet was in ruins. Those ships that hadn't been destroyed were captured, their crews taken prisoner. The bioweapons were neutralized, and New Eden began the slow process of healing. Survivors emerged from bunkers, their faces lighting up with hope as they saw the human soldiers standing guard. For the first time in weeks, the colony felt safe. Kane addressed the survivors, his voice carrying across the ruins. "We came here because you are ours," he said, his tone firm but compassionate. "And anyone who dares harm us will learn why the stars tremble at the mention of Earth." As the humans prepared to leave, they left behind advanced technology and instructions for fortifying the colony against future threats. They also planted markers broadcasting a clear message to any potential invaders. This world is protected. Approach at your peril. The fleet departed, vanishing into the vastness of space. But the legend of the Deathworlders lived on, spreading throughout the galaxy. The Vorthik's defeat became a cautionary tale, whispered among starfaring civilizations. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the universe, Other empires began to wonder if perhaps humanity might be more dangerous than anyone imagined. Earth may be a death world, but its people were far deadlier. The battle was over, but the scars of war remained. New Eden lay in ruins, its once thriving fields reduced to ash, and its cities nothing more than rubble. The air still carried the faint scent of smoke, and the ground bore the marks of countless explosions. Yet, amidst the devastation, there was a sense of hope. The survivors who had endured weeks of terror now stepped cautiously into the light, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also relief. They had been saved, not by chance, but by the determination of those who refused to abandon them. Commander Marcus Kane stood at the edge of what used to be the colony's central plaza, his boots crunching against broken glass and debris. Around him, teams of engineers and medics worked tirelessly, clearing paths, treating the wounded, and setting up temporary shelters for the displaced. The humans from Earth moved with purpose, their actions driven by years of surviving under impossible conditions. To them, this was not just cleanup. It was another fight won against despair and loss. Elena Voss approached Kane, her steps hesitant. She had changed since he first met her. Her eyes were harder, her posture straighter. The horrors she had witnessed had left their mark, but so had the courage she had found within herself. "Commander," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. I don't know how to thank you." Kane turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he simply studied her, as if trying to gauge whether she truly understood what had happened here. Then, he nodded slowly. "You don't need to thank us," he replied. "We didn't come here for gratitude. We came because you're human, and that makes you family." Elena blinked, taken aback by the simplicity of his words. Family. She had never thought of humanity in such terms. Before not until she saw what lengths these strangers were willing to go to protect her. It was humbling and terrifying. If Earth could mobilize an entire fleet to save one colony, what else were they capable of? As Kane walked away, Elena noticed something else. The soldiers weren't just rebuilding, they were fortifying. Walls made of reinforced materials rose around key locations, designed to withstand future attacks. Sensors and drones patrolled the skies, scanning for any sign of danger. The message was clear. New Eden would rise again, stronger and more resilient than ever. But it wouldn't be defenseless. Lieutenant Sarah Quinn oversaw much of the reconstruction effort. Her team worked closely with the colonists, teaching them basic survival skills and showing them how to use the advanced technology left behind by the fleet. "This isn't just about fixing what's broken," Quinn told a group of survivors during one training session. "It's about making sure you're ready for whatever comes next. You've got grit. That's half the battle. Now we're giving you the tools to win." The colonists listened intently, soaking up every word. Many of them had never held a weapon or fought for their lives before the invasion. But now, they understood the stakes. Survival wasn't guaranteed, it had to be earned. And thanks to Quinn and her team, they were learning how to do just that. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, King reviewed the final reports from the mission. The Vorthic hegemony had been dealt a devastating blow, but it wasn't gone. Scattered remnants of their fleet still drifted through space, regrouping and licking their wounds. Tazrik's capture had sent shockwaves through their ranks, but Kane knew better than to assume victory was permanent. Empires like the Vorthics didn't fall easily. Sooner or later, they would try again. But next time, they would think twice. Kane called together his officers for one last meeting before departure. The mood in the room was somber yet triumphant. These men and women had faced unimaginable odds and emerged victorious. They had proven not only to the galaxy, but also to themselves that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. This was more than a rescue mission. Kane began, his voice steady. It was a statement. A message to anyone out there who thinks they can take what's ours without consequence. Let them hear about this day. Let them remember what happens when they cross us. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then, he added, but remember this. We didn't win because we're stronger or smarter. We won because we refuse to give up. Because we adapt. Because we fight not just for ourselves, but for each other. That's what makes us dangerous. When the meeting ended, Kane walked to the observation deck, staring out at the battered planet below. From this distance, New Eden looked small and fragile, like a flickering candle in the vast darkness of space. But Kane knew better. He had seen the fire burning inside its people, the same fire that burned inside every human back on Earth. It was a fire that couldn't be extinguished. No matter how hard others tried, the fleet prepared to leave, its ships lining up for departure. As the engines roared to life, the colonists gathered outside, watching in awe as the massive vessels lifted off. Some waved, others saluted, and a few simply stood in silence, overwhelmed by gratitude. They knew they owed their lives to these warriors, but they also knew something else. Earth wasn't just a place. It was a promise that no matter where humanity went, it would always stand together. As the ships disappeared into the stars, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. Stories of the Deathworlders reached distant civilizations, sparking both fear and admiration. Merchants whispered tales of Earth's unyielding defenders in crowded marketplaces. Scholars debated whether humanity's resilience stemmed from their environment or their spirit. And rulers pondered whether it was wise to test the limits of Earth's fury. For the Vortex, the defeat was a humiliation they could not ignore. Survivors of the Armada returned to their homeworld, carrying news of their failure. Their leaders convened in secret, discussing how to counter this unexpected threat. Some argued for retaliation, while others suggested caution. After all, humanity had shown they were not just survivors, they were predators. Predators that hunted those who dared harm them. Back on Earth, life continued as it always had, harsh, unforgiving, and relentless. The planet's people went about their daily struggles, unaware of the legend they had become. To them, survival was not extraordinary. It was ordinary. But somewhere deep within the collective consciousness of humanity, a new understanding took root. They were no longer alone in the universe. And if others sought to challenge them, they would answer, not with fear, but with fury. In the end, the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Earth was not just a world. It was a warning. A reminder that even in the darkest corners of existence, humanity's flame burned bright. And woe to anyone who tried to snuff it out. Earth may be a death world, but its people were far deadlier.